Hello, class, and welcome to our reading and writing about literature, day 2 review. Um, Essentially, what are we focusing on here? Well, as it says, right, asking critical questions of literature. So, as I'm looking at pages 18 and 19, the first thing they start with is Ben Jonson's On My First Son. I thought we did a nice job responding in the discussion, those of you that have posted so far, about how, again, we see his worldview on death and grieving. And I think it's pretty interesting how he relates it to his feelings personally about creating poetry as an artist, right? The poem On My First Son, right, lets us know what the focus is. He's reflecting on his son. Um, And as we read on, we understand that the son has died. So, yet another story about the human experience dealing with death and grief, much like Hamlet, much like Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Right? Farewell, thou child of my right hand and joy. My sin was too much hope of thee, loved boy. Okay. So, not only does he have rhyme, but and you can see with the annotations in the book, my sin, he feels as though he did something wrong, was too much hope of thee. Um, and I think when you kind of look back at the poem, for me, it's a reflection from a parent who outlived their child. And his sin, I think, when he says sin, is that he didn't, he thought his son would live forever in terms of longer than him. Too much hope of thee, love boy. 7 years thou wert lent to me, and I thee pay, exacted by thy fate on the just day. So the child passed away at 7. Oh, could I lose all father now? For why will man lament the state he should envy, to have so soon scaped world's and flesh's rage, and if no other misery, yet age? Why would one lament? Why would be sad about something they should envy? So is he suggesting that his son is in a better place, so he should not be sad? Right? But we do that though. We are sad, even though the person's in a better place. The question is, do you believe in religion? Now, you don't have to, but if you do believe in religion, right? Heaven, hell, right? Same with Hamlet. That's why he can't kill himself. That's why he contemplates suicide, but he doesn't want to go to hell. He doesn't want to go down because it's a sin. So for those that believe in religion, right? There's a lot going on in this poem, right? And even if you don't believe in religion, right, you can still recognize the idea that when you die, perhaps your spirit, perhaps your body, perhaps your soul goes to a better place. So that's kind of what he's suggesting: is his son in a better place? World's flesh and rage, and if no other misery, yet age, because as you age, right, there's more health risks and right things of that nature. Rest in soft peace, and asked, say, here doth lie Ben Jonson, his best piece of poetry. So is the sun his best piece of poetry? I think he's kind of making this comparison that just as, right, you would value something, right? So he's a poet, so he values this poem, right? And it's, why did he write this poem? Because his son died, right? So in some ways, the son's death inspired him to write this poem, right? So could that be the epitaph, right, on the son's grave? Could it be that his son was his best creation, and he calls it his best piece of poetry, or does he mean this poem itself? For whose sake henceforth all his vows be such as what he loves may never like too much. I think the last lines bring it all together, much like the last lines of Because I Could Not Stop for Death, and much like the last lines of a short story. Remember, as I said, when you're reading poetry, when you're reading stories, consider, when you're reading speeches in Hamlet, consider the first lines and the last lines. Specifically with poems and stories, consider the title and the last lines, right? For whose sake, right, on my first son, he's reflecting on his son, he's writing on his son, for whose sake henceforth all his vows be such. Everything I do from here on out is going to be for him. Everything I write is going to be for him, as what he loves may never like too much. Now remember, he's a poet. So what he's saying, what he loves, his son, may never like too much. His son has passed away. So he's saying, everything I write from here on out is going to be for you. I just hope I don't like it too much because I love you and I like writing. And because you died, I have a lot to write about now. So I don't want to like it. Again, the speaker of the poem, I think, is reflecting obviously on death and grief, but also on the creation of art. A lot of times, art comes out of something bad happening, right? And that's why he says, "For what he loves may never like too much, and as what he loves may never like too much." Look at those last two lines again. For whose sake henceforth all his vows be such, as what he loves may never like too much. Right? He's saying, I hope I don't like it too much because the son's death has inspired creativity, it's inspired this poem, and it's going to continue to inspire the poet. And as we know, artists are constantly looking for inspiration. So I think it's a very honest and interesting reflection on grief and mourning. So, as pages 20 and 21, right, think about cultural context, and in light of the poem, excuse me, the bullet points on 21, right, how common was childhood death at the time? How involved were fathers in their lives? Is the quote the boy's epitaph? How difficult was life then? How common was poetry on the topic? What attitudes about God and heaven were common then? Cultural context, belief, attitudes, traditions, practices. Notice how all of these questions help you to think about the poem because there's no hidden meaning, right? It's not like at the end the author says, "This is what it was about," right? Um, on page 22, they continue asking questions. If childhood death was common, how would his readers have related? Did he write this for wide circulation or just for family and friends? When was it published? Who was going to read it? Where was it published? Do children read it differently? Do parents read it differently? And then again on page 23, we have our checklist for good reading, right? Rereading things, slowing down, looking up difficult words, underlining key phrases, writing notes in the margins, um, considering context. Remember, these are all parts of annotating. We saw our video on annotating. We read our chapter on annotating in reading and writing about literature, and we've seen numerous examples of annotating. So hopefully you're feeling pretty confident annotating things, whether it's a story, a poem, a passage in a play, a section in the book, what have you. Your next uh, reading assignment for day 4 of week 1, right, is Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour, right? And that's going to be your first paper topic. So when you're reading that story, take notes in the margin, underline topic sentences, circle key terms, things of that nature. And hopefully, as you're moving forward, you'll feel more confident when you answer that question in 2F because you can go back and look at your notes. So take notes while you're reading, just as the annotation documents and videos and readings in the books have told us. Thank you for your patience. Stay tuned. Hamlet video reviews of Acts 1, Scene 3, Scene 4, and Scene 5 coming up shortly. Thank you for your patience.